I see your Schwartz is as big as mine. Now let's see how well you handle it.
Welcome into Sports with Schwartz here on 91.3 WVUD and WVUD HD1 Newark. I'm your host, Sam Schwartz. Pleased to be with you on a nice Wednesday afternoon. Weather finally starting to warm up. Headlines coming into the day. Derrick Rose hurt again. We'll talk about that and potential implications of that injury, a knee injury, knee surgery looming for Rose once again. Keeping with the injury theme, David Krejci's out for 4 to 6 weeks, and Pat Kane on long-term IR for the Blackhawks. Bad losses for the Bruins and Blackhawks respectively, and then Manny Ramirez and Kevin Youkilis hired by the Chicago Cubs. We'll talk about that. And the MLB has implemented a rule to try to quicken the pace of those games. We'll talk about that rule going forward. Once again, Sam Schwartz, pleased to have you with me here on Sports with Schwartz. Start off with the Mid-Atlantic Sports Review. I'll get to the NBA trade deadline a little later. Start off with some hockey. The Philadelphia Flyers inching closer to the Boston Bruins for that 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. They're currently 5th in the Metropolitan Division with 36 points, 13 behind the Washington Capitals, and then 4 behind the Boston Bruins. The Florida Panthers are ahead of them in the wild card race, but Flyers lost 4-1 last night down in Carolina. They'll go up to Toronto to play the Maple Leafs tomorrow, then home for the Rangers, Flames, and Blues. That's the schedule for about the next week for the Flyers, but let's go over that last game. Cam Ward, great goaltender for the Canes, but 4-1, and the goaltender situation really is just pretty unfortunate now. You have Emery going out with an injury after Steve Mason is already sidelined. They throw in this guy last night, Rob Zepp, made 31 saves, faced 35 shots, and did let in those 4 goals, but that's a lot of shots. That's a little bit more of a defensive lapse. I think he's played pretty well since taking over for Mason and I guess Emery now. But the lone goal scorer for Philadelphia was Nicholas Grossman, assisted by Voracek, his 45th assist, as well as Matt Reed. So, Flyers in a bit of a tough spot here. I mentioned 5th in the Metropolitan Division. They have won 7 of their last 10, but that loss last night, they're 3rd in 10, as you can do the math there. I mentioned Pat Kane out with that injury. He's tied with the league lead in points with Voracek and Backstrom. So Voracek now a chance to scoot past him. He's one behind Nicholas Backstrom for the league lead in assists with those 45. Keep with the hockey here. Move along to the New York, or I guess we'll go to the Capitals since they're right above the Flyers. 76 points, 4th in the Metropolitan Division. They would get the first wild card spot if the playoffs ended today. And they have won 7 of their last 10. I'm sorry, I misread that. Flyers actually have only won 4 of their last 10. The Capitals, 7 of their last 10. This is a good hockey team. Their last game was actually against the Flyers, and they lost in that one, but they have the leading goal scorer in Alex Ovechkin. He's got 38 on the season, right ahead of Rick Nash. And then he's up there with his point total of 61 as well. That's top 5 for Ovi. I mentioned Backstrom leading the league in assists with 46. He now has a chance to take the lead in points. He's tied with the lead, 64 points on the season, tied with Kane, Voracek, but this is a good hockey club. I think the addition of Orpik, now an assistant captain for this team, beefing up that defense has really helped out. I think I said last week on the show that the hole is really going to be Brandon Holtby, and he might be the X factor here going forward, especially in the playoffs. I mean, right now you're looking at a matchup against the Islanders in the first round of the playoffs, and that's a tough team. We'll go to them now. Looking at the New York Islanders, they're coming off a 5-1 win at home against Arizona. They got Calgary and Carolina at home before they hit the road next week to go on to Dallas. But this game last night, I mentioned 5-1 goal scorers for the Islanders. Anders Lee, Matt Martin, Johnny Boychuk, Cal Mulleret, Brock Nelson. So 5 goals, 5 different goal scorers. And this Islanders team is really rolling. I mean, the Phoenix Coyotes are not a great team. So it's not a crazy victory here, but you get 5 goal scorers from 5 different guys. I mean, Nelson had a goal and an assist. So did Mulleret, and Chad Johnson, the third star of the game, with 28 saves. But this team could be dangerous. I mean, Johnny Tavares got an assist in that one. That's his 34th of the season. And I mentioned, I mean, they're facing the the Capitals in the first round, potentially. And that's a tough matchup for the Capitals, a tough matchup for the Islanders as well. But right now they're the stronger team, and they're second in the Eastern Conference with 82 points, right behind the Montreal Canadiens with 83. And they're atop the Metropolitan Division, having won 7 of their last 10. So watch out for those Islanders. They got a good team, some good hockey out on Long Island. Let's move into the city. Back to MSG with the Rangers. Their last game, 1-0 win against the Calgary Flames. They'll take on the Coyotes at home tomorrow, and then they go on the road to Philadelphia on Saturday. But this is a team still without Henrik Lundqvist. And Cam Talbot's getting it done. He was the 1 star last night, or first star, I should say, with 21 saves. You got the game-winning goal by Kevin Hayes 3 minutes into the third period, assisted by Derek Brassard. So those two, I should say, that one, Hayes, the second star. And just a hard-fought win by the Rangers, getting that late goal. And I don't know if you saw this, but the goaltender, Kerry Ramo, for the Flames, what a save, just robbing Miller, I believe it was. And, oh my goodness, it's one of those stretching out the glove, diving, laying out across the goal. And that was a huge save, but ultimately came up on the short end of that one. So, nonetheless, a valiant effort. And if you haven't seen that, please check that out. That is an incredible save. Go back to Tim Thomas in the Stanley Cup, or in the Eastern Conference Finals, I guess, with that stick save. But this one, right into the glove. Really just a sick save. Let's move on. Last hockey team, I guess, is the Devils. Not having a great season. 59 points. They're not out of it, but they're 4 behind from the Capitals in the Metropolitan Division. They've played good hockey as of late. They won 4 in a row. Also coming off of a win against the Coyotes. It seems like everyone in the Metropolitan Division is playing Arizona right now. But won 4 in a row. 6 of their last 10 in last night's game. Scott Gomez getting the goal scoring started for the Devils, and then Mike Camilleri had 2, the last one being an empty netter. But a good win for them there. Corey Schneider, 38 saves for the Devils. This Devils team, certainly some holes to fill, but nonetheless, they're in the hunt. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, and they need some roster adjustments. But nonetheless, Devils playing good hockey as of late, winning 4 in a row. Move on to basketball. This is the Mid-Atlantic Sports Review. We'll go back to the Philadelphia area and start with the Sixers. Played pretty well, actually, against the Heat in that last game. There was some sweet shots. There was a buzzer beater that was actually nullified, but then I believe it was Sims with like a catch and shoot to beat a shot clock, and that was a sweet shot. And they did come up short against the Heat in Miami, but entertaining basketball nonetheless. And I'll get to the trade deadline in a little bit, but I don't know what this team is doing at this point. To be honest, trading Michael Carter-Williams, trading KJ McDaniels. They did get JaVale McGee, but I don't know. This team, I think, is lost at this point. And they're just continuing really one of the most impressive tanking efforts I have certainly seen in my lifetime. And I said, I think it was last week, I said it was going to be tough for them to get that number 1 ping pong ball sitting above New York now. The Knicks are so bad. They've lost 7 in a row, but the Sixers 4 in a row. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. But I'll get to the trade deadline in just a second, because that Sixers team is just perplexing. They're sitting at 12-44 right now. They lost 4 in a row, as I mentioned. 1-10 record in the division, 7-20 at home, 5-24 on the road. They've lost 7 of their last 10. And this team, again, is just headed for the ping pong balls and crossing their fingers for Joel Embiid. Move back to the D.C. area. You have the Wizards, who have kind of slipped up a little bit, and they're now 5th in the conference. They've lost 4 in a row, 8 of their last 10, and not coming out of the All-Star break strong by any means. They got beat by the Warriors last night. Got beat by the Warriors, and it was a solid game. It's fun to watch Curry and Wall go at it, but nonetheless, Wizards coming up short for their 4th loss in a row. Paul Pierce led the scoring for the DC kids with 25. Wall had 16. Temple had 10. Gortat had 16. Serafin had 10. But this team's kind of struggling now. They're limping a little bit, and they need to get their you-know-what together to get back into the playoffs and make a rush, because now they've been passed by Cleveland and Chicago. And, this is a team, I mean, they were 3rd at one point, and now Chicago's 3. Lost Derrick Rose. I'll get to that in a minute. But that really could help them out here, but they got to get some wins. I mean, you look at their upcoming schedule, they came out of the break having played the Pistons and Warriors, and they got throttled by the Pistons. I mean, I know they made some moves at the deadline, but the Wizards are struggling here out of the break. And I forgot about that Cleveland game, too. So they lost by almost 30 in that game. Then they lost by 17 to the Pistons, and then 7 to the Warriors. So a tough stretch coming out of the break for the Wiz kids. And they got the Timberwolves in Minnesota tonight. And then Friday they're in Philadelphia. So maybe a couple chances to get some wins and get back on track. Let's move ahead now. The last playoff team. I don't know why. The last playoff team right now, a team that I don't think will make the playoffs, is the Brooklyn Nets. Not really making a splash in at the trade deadline. I was really hoping for Brook Lopez to be out of there and head to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I thought there was still a chance that they could surprise people and ship off Williams and Johnson, at least one of the two. But that didn't happen. So this Nets team is really trying to fend off the Pistons now. They're coming on strong, and I think it's the Pistons. Now the Hornets are out of it, but nonetheless, Nets I don't think are going to make the playoffs. They're in the playoff spot right now, but coming out of the break, they have won 2 in a row against the Lakers and Nuggets, not good teams. And then they have coming up tonight is the Pelicans without Anthony Davis again, and then they have the Rockets and Mavs, Warriors. That's a tough stretch for the Nets, and I think that's really a chance for teams below them to catch up to them. But the Nets currently won 2 in a row, 5 of their last 10. My prediction is they miss out on the playoffs, but they still have a pretty good squad. The only trade they made was Kevin Garnett, shipping him back to Minnesota, and they got Thaddeus Young for him, which I thought was a good trade. Really, I think they had enough of Kevin Garnett. They got enough out of him, training or grooming Plumlee, if you will, and they'll pay KG a visit on March 16th in Minnesota. Sticking in the New York area, we got the Knicks, the worst team in basketball, 10-45. Lost 7 in a row, 8 of their last 10. This team is tough to watch. They're coming off of a loss against Cleveland, and they have the Celtics tonight in Boston, a game that the Celtics should probably have. And the Celtics made some moves at the deadline, so they could potentially be a playoff team. But the Knicks unable to ship out Calderon. They were trying to get Dragic, unable to ship out Calderon, and I believe Hardaway Jr. was the other name in there, but they're stuck with them, and that's pretty much the extent of that team right now. And Phil Jackson has really pissed me off since he came to New York. He's taken to Twitter, kind of blaming the players recently, and it's just ugly in New York with the Knicks, and they're in trouble. They're going to need Jaleel Okafor, or someone coming out of this draft. And, I don't think it's a huge draft. You got Okafor, Kromitsky, Cauley Stein will probably enter. I'm just speculating there, but it's going to be an interesting draft, and none of those players are really going to turn the Knicks around. They're going to have to make some deals. They're going to have to sign a big-name free agent. You look at Rajon Rondo out there. He's causing problems in Dallas. Not sure that they want him anymore. You got to wait for Melo to come back from knee surgery. So it's interesting, and the Knicks are in a tough spot, but should be a good news for the NBA draft. I guess that's what they're setting their sights on. So that's that. That'll do it for the Mid-Atlantic Sports Review. I'll come back in for the next half hour, talk a little NBA. We got NBA trade deadline. I'll tell you who's the most improved, who's the best team coming out of the trade deadline, and who made the best deal, winners and losers of the trade deadline on the other side of this break. It's Sports with Schwartz. Don't go anywhere.
Schwartz is in front. He's got a pair tonight. He scores! A horse!
Back here on 91.3 WVUD and WVUD HD1 Newark. Sam Schwartz back in the studio. Shout out to Marcus Efficient on the track. I was going to have him in the studio or on air today, but no dice, so we'll get to him in the near future. This is my producer, if you will, with the beats. All right, let's move into the NBA trade deadline. We've passed it. We stormed through it. And I'll tell you the winners and losers right now. First of all, quick recap. If you didn't know, Goran Dragic, probably the best player to move at the trade deadline. He is on the Heat now. You Sixers fans saw him last night, or 2 nights ago rather, against the Heat. Sixers were down there and lost. Dragic is down there, and the Heat gave up a lot to get him. Couple first-round picks, future first-rounders, Danny Granger, Norris Cole, Williams, and Hamilton, all to the Phoenix Suns. So a good move, I think, by Phoenix, and the Heat get their man. Unfortunately for them, though, Chris Bosh out for the season, blood clots in his lung. Really just sad news coming out of Miami. And with Dragic, they became a favorite. I think they became a team that could make a run, make a push. Norris Cole, Danny Granger, you didn't give up too much in terms of talent, and you get Dragic. So I thought they made a good move, and just losing Bosh almost the day after was just that was tough and bad news for the Heat. But sticking with the Suns, they deal Isaiah Thomas to the Celtics for Marcus Thornton and a pick. That was one of the more surprising moves, shipping out Isaiah Thomas. Celtics, they went up. They were really a surprise team at this trade deadline and able to get Isaiah Thomas. He was ejected in his first game, which ultimately resulted in a loss for the Celtics in Los Angeles against the Lakers. But a good move for them going forward. Sullinger is out for the season. So another injury kind of, prolonging the rebuilding process for the Celtics here. But Isaiah Thomas is a good player, and I was pretty surprised that the Suns let go of him. They were trying to ship him off in order to keep Dragic. They were trying to keep Dragic's brother, who also went to the Heat, just so Goran would stay there. But Goran made it pretty clear that he wasn't re-signing with the Suns, so they had to do that, and then they ship off Thomas as well. But on the flip side, they made a trade with the Milwaukee Bucks to get Brandon Knight, the former Kentucky Wildcat, and I think that was a good trade to kind of fill the void there. Unfortunately, they're out of the playoffs right now. Like, pretty much immediately after the trade deadline, they slipped out. They've lost 5 in a row in 8 of their last 10. And I think in a Western Conference that's tough, that has the Thunder in the playoffs now. They made some deals. I think the Suns' season is severely in jeopardy, and I don't think they make the playoffs. But nonetheless, they get Brandon Knight, a couple of picks, and then send Miles Plumlee and Tyler Ennis to Milwaukee. And Milwaukee also got Michael Carter-Williams from the Sixers. I mentioned the Sixers, just incredible effort to tank, and I thought Michael Carter-Williams was the best player on their team. He was in the Rising Stars Challenge with Noel, and they end up keeping Noel, getting JaVale McGee for virtually nothing. And they just have a plethora of big men. They get rid of McDaniels and Carter-Williams. They're two talented young guys. They still have Covington, but I can't even name guys on this team anymore, and I don't know what they're thinking. I think Michael Carter-Williams certainly had the highest potential on this team aside from Joel Embiid, but this is the Rookie of the Year, and you trade him at the deadline to the Bucks. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know. They didn't really get anything for him either. So I really don't know. I mean, you don't have a point guard now. You got to go back to the lottery. You're waiting on Embiid. JaVale McGee's a good player, but he's kind of a knucklehead, and I watched the game and almost immediately saw him get a goaltend against him, and that was kind of his protocol there in Denver. But they didn't give up much for him, which is good, and they had the flexibility to trade him, Noel, or Embiid when they come back. But I really don't see the motive to trade Carter-Williams and McDaniels, so Philly left with nothing pretty much again. We'll stick with the local teams. The Wizards got Sessions and dished Andre Miller to the Kings for Ramon Sessions. I thought a pretty good trade. Andre Miller, one of those veteran guys that's been in the league a long time, and they really didn't have much of a need for him. And Ramon Sessions, a solid player who the Kings were willing to give up. I think both teams benefited in that one. And another team that was kind of a sneaky team in this trade deadline that benefited hugely was the Detroit Pistons. They were the ones that were able to snag Reggie Jackson from the Thunder, and they also got Tayshaun Prince. He was not happy about the trade. He said he was blindsided by Boston and did not want to go back to Detroit at all. But he's not going to make an incredible difference. But it was his old team, his former team, and he was a good player on that team with the Wallaces, Rasheed and Ben, and then Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, all those guys. But nonetheless, I think the Reggie Jackson deal was the biggest for Detroit. And right now they're in it. They moved up a good amount since the trade deadline, since the All-Star break. They're sitting right now 2 back of Brooklyn, and I say 2 back as in 2 spots back, 1.5 games back. And they're right behind Charlotte. Charlotte actually was bumped out, but Detroit's got a heck of a chance to make the playoffs. They've lost. They're coming off a loss, but they've won 6 of their last 10. And I mentioned I don't think the Nets really have the strength to make the playoffs, even with Williams, Johnson, and Lopez, as well as Plumlee. They have a good team, but they're still under 500, as well as the Heat. And without Bosh, the Heat are a giant question mark. I mentioned the Wizards are falling too, slipping down towards 500. So Detroit, I think, has a heck of a chance. They'll have to battle Charlotte for that 8th seed ultimately. But good trades. Reggie Jackson's going to be huge, and you get Brandon Jennings back from injury, and you're looking at a pretty solid lineup for the Pistons in the near future next year. The Thunder, I think, were certainly a big factor. They needed to make some moves, and they did. They didn't get Brook Lopez. I was really pulling for that trade. I thought that would happen, and I thought that it would have been huge for the Thunder to get another big man alongside Ibaka. They did dump Perkins, gave him up to the Jazz, who apparently will buy him out for, and then waive him for the Cavaliers. I guess LeBron James recruited him, which is just great, and that's the NBA, and that's how this stuff works. And there's been a lot of buyouts. I think Larry Sanders was bought out by the Bucks, so they actually have been a little shaky. I don't know why they traded Knight, now buying out Sanders, and they didn't really get much in the trade deadline, so that's a team that could slip as well. They have been playing good basketball. The Houston Rockets were the ones that came in and snatched KJ McDaniels. I think that's a big pickup. Portland Trailblazers, another team atop the West, able to pick up Aaron Aflalo for 3 guys that were virtually non-factors in Portland, so that's a huge pickup. He beefed up their defense. Kevin Garnett back to Minnesota. I mentioned that a little earlier. But yeah, going back to OKC, they get DJ Augustin, Kyle Singler, and Enes Kanter. Kanter had a big day last night, giving Russell Westbrook a triple-double. He and Ibaka played very well, and this is a team I mentioned. They went up big in the trade deadline and almost immediately went into playoff contention. They're now the 8th seed. They're 2.5 back from the Thunder. They've won 7 in a row, 9 of their last 10, and watch out, this is not even with Kevin Durant, I should say. And Russell Westbrook has emerged as a candidate for MVP, and he has had a serious season. Battled injuries early, but has just exploded. Mentioned he's coming off a triple-double. So the winners and losers of the trade deadline has to be the Thunder. I think they're the biggest winner. They needed another big man. Enes Kanter was on the market. They snatched him up. Didn't get Lopez, but still a great addition. And I just mentioned the effects that has brought this organization getting into the 8th seed in the Western Conference. It's going to be tough for them to make a run, but I mentioned Kevin Durant's on the sideline. Steven Adams is as well. So if they're healthy come playoffs, that's dangerous. That's deadly. And the way Russell Westbrook is playing right now, I would not want to face that team. So Thunder, my number 1 winner. The Miami Heat, I also mentioned, they're a winner. They got the best player on the market in Goran Dragic, but it was unfortunate that Chris Bosh went out with the injury because I mentioned I thought they became a serious contender with that trade. They're still 7th, but still under 500, and moving forward, a great deal again. And Dragic maybe will re-sign with the Heat. It's unfortunate that he hasn't gotten a chance to play with Bosh, but Heat definitely a trade deadline winner getting Dragic. The Pistons too. Tayshaun Prince, I know he wasn't happy. He's not a huge player anymore, but going back to Detroit adds some depth, some veteran experience and leadership. And Reggie Jackson, another one of the hottest commodities on the market, going to Detroit, and they're a serious contender for a playoff spot now. They're not by any means a title contender. Don't mistake me for that, but the Pistons have moved up in the standings, and they might not make the playoffs if, say, Paul George comes back with injury. They're tied with the Pacers right now, and if Paul George is back, then Pacers just coming out of nowhere. That would be crazy, and I don't want him to rush back by any means because he broke his freaking leg. But that could be dangerous. And the Pistons are a game or a half game behind Charlotte, and they're not even in the playoffs yet. So the Pistons may not make the playoffs, but nonetheless a winner in the trade deadline, getting Reggie Jackson, and he should be a great complement to Brandon Jennings going forward. My last winner, I'll do 4 here. The Blazers. The Portland Trail Blazers picking up Aaron Aflalo. I think that was huge. And this is a team that I thought would kind of slip a little bit and kind of flake out, I guess. But LaMarcus Aldridge is a beast playing through that injury. They have lost 2 in a row, but they're right up atop the West. They're 8.5 back from the Warriors, but the Houston Rockets are 7 back, so they're right there with them in the mix of things. So that I thought was a great pickup for Portland. I think something's going to happen down the stretch. Maybe Aldridge can't quite continue his success with that thumb. Damian Lillard might have to carry this team. Aflalo is not a great scorer, more of a defensive specialist, but a great player and a great addition for sure. So the Blazers, my winner, another one of my winners from the trade deadline. Let's go to the losers. I have to say the Phoenix Suns, even though I think they handled the trade deadline as best they could, picking up a lot of players. Norris Cole's a solid pickup, and they did get Brandon Knight from Milwaukee. But you lose not only Dragic, which you knew it was going to happen, and it was better that they get rid of him. And they pretty much got max value, I think, in a couple future first rounders and 4 players from the Heat. But at the same time, they dished off Isaiah Thomas too, and that's kind of where I'm thinking, what are you doing? What's the motive here? I think maybe they got Norris Cole and said, all right, screw this 3-guard thing. Let's just clean it up. And Eric Bledsoe's been playing well as pretty much the leader now. But they got Marcus Thornton for Isaiah Thomas, which is, I think, a huge downgrade. And now they still have a plethora of guards. They got Knight, Cole, Thornton, Bledsoe. You gave up Dragic and Thomas, who were playing great, and now they're out of the playoffs, and I think it's going to be virtually impossible for them to get back into a playoff spot. So the Suns have to be a loser in my mind. Again, they handled it as best they could with the Dragic situation, but dealing Thomas was not great. And, this is a team I thought would have been decimated by the trade deadline, starting with Dragic. But they did get some quality players, and they're not in terrible shape, but nonetheless a loser at the trade deadline. They lost more than they gained. Philadelphia 76ers have to be a loser too. What the hell are they doing? I don't get it. Michael Carter-Williams gone, KJ McDaniels gone. That was 2 of the brightest players for this team, in my opinion. I mean, Nerlens Noel is a good player, but he's still got a long way to go to develop. And Michael Carter-Williams, I mentioned, the Rookie of the Year last year, and they just dumped him. They didn't really get anything. They got JaVale McGee for nothing. But again, that's just a lot of big men and a lot of nothing else. So the Sixers have to be a loser. Again, they need to rely on draft picks, and it's going to be a long time before this team gets back to a contender. Joel Embiid is not helping them out, and at the trade deadline, they really they were a surprise. I haven't heard much talk about it. I haven't heard much defense for their moves, but I don't know what they're doing, man. It's annoying. It's not very logical, is the way I'll put it. My last loser, I guess I should do 4, but my third loser is the Los Angeles Clippers. They didn't do anything. Blake Griffin's still out with the injury. I thought they would try to go after, maybe even Kendrick Perkins. They have guys that they could have given up. Harrison Barnes, J.J. Redick. They could have traded that for kind of a fill-in big man, but Doc Rivers, I think, is just trusting Big Baby at this point. I saw him do that, and they were able to actually get a win over the Spurs, courtesy of the most ridiculous coaching strategy in all of basketball, the hack of Shaq on DeAndre Jordan, the hack of Jordan. And that's, they kind of won the game off that, but they've slipped a little bit. They're 8.5 back of the Warriors, and That's in the conference, I guess, in the division as well, but lost 5 of their last 10. They're in 6th in the West, and it's a tough West, and you got the Spurs and the Thunder hot on their tails. So the Clippers, I think, by not doing anything at the deadline is just a huge risk, and you're just kind of waiting for the return of Blake Griffin, which will be fine, and they're a playoff team, but I thought they needed to make a deal. I thought they had the potential to make a deal, and they didn't. So that wraps it up for winner-loser of the trade deadline. My biggest winner is the Thunder. My biggest loser has to be the Sixers, and that was pretty much the extent of that. So I'll take a break quickly here. We'll get back with that hockey news. I'll talk a little D Rose and baseball, baby. Baseball season is upon us. I can feel that spring air outside right now, and I am ready to go for baseball season. I'll be right back. Sports with Schwartz, 91.3 WVUD.
Rebound. Schwartz. He scores! The hat trick for Schwartz.
Hey, me. 2014 is the year, man. Pop will be around 42. So let's get the show.
Hated when I get my Schwartz twisted.
I'll make a deal with you. Flip a coin. Nicely done.
So soulful, baby. Hope you all having a peaceful day here, a little afternoon in Newark. A nice Wednesday. Here on 91.3 WVUD and WVUD HD1 Newark. Once again, Marcus Efficient on the track. You can check him out on SoundCloud. He's got some good beats. So let's continue with the NBA talk here. Derrick Rose hurt again, and this is devastating because I think it was Tim Legler who said, this is a recurring theme now. And he did have the back-to-back injuries last season, the season before, 2 knees, ACL, meniscus, and now he's got the same meniscus. He's got to have it operated on. He's not out for the season, but this is a huge blow to Derrick Rose, his career, and the Chicago Bulls. And I'll keep this brief, but Bulls now, they're sitting in 3rd in the East, 8.5 back of the Hawks, won 2 in a row, 6 of their last 10. But now without Rose, I mean, they can certainly perform, but the thing, they're going to have to just keep him out, I think. And his confidence is going to be low. You saw him say before the season started, I'm thinking about life after basketball, and I don't blame him. He's a human. He's not going to be playing this game forever. And now he might not even be playing into his 30s. I actually don't know how old he is. I think he's 28 or something like that. I'll look it up, but he's 26. And I would give him the chances that he plays into his 30s now, I would say, are under 10%. I really do. This is going to kill his confidence. He's such an agile player. His game is so aggressive on his legs, and now you're seeing it's taking a toll. It's taking a toll on his body, and this might be the nail in the coffin, if you will. I mean, it's sad, but I mentioned he's following the path of Greg Oden. And now this might be the one that does it, and he might, have the surgery, maybe comes back, end of regular season and playoffs, tries to give the Bulls a push, but he's not the same player anymore. That's been apparent. Tom Thibodeau's really had to focus on managing his minutes, and now with him out, his career is severely in jeopardy, in my opinion. And, the Bulls are going to have to think about life after him. I think Thibodeau said it himself, we can't expect that he's going to be back. We have to anticipate playing without him. So tough news, and I think, we're seeing close to the last of the 26-year-old Derrick Rose, which is really sad, and I hope that he can return this season and give his team a little push in the playoffs, because that Bulls team is nice and it's fun to watch. Speaking of injuries, over to the NHL, which is just the crazy amount of injuries that these guys play through. David Krejci is out 4 to 6 weeks with a partially torn MCL. That's what Zdeno Chara had earlier in the season. You see, he's not really the same player. But Krejci hopes to be back by the end of the regular season, and a huge blow to a struggling Bruins team. Patrick Kane, on the other hand, he's the leading scorer in the league, and he's on long-term IR now with an upper body injury, and that's huge for the Blackhawks. This is a Blackhawks team that's, in a similar predicament to the Bruins. They are a playoff team. They're actually one of the top 3 teams in the Central Division, and for that matter, the 4th best team in the Western Conference. But losing Patty Kane, the leading scorer, is a huge blow to them. It's tough to see, and he's out for an extended period of time now. That I think it was originally 8 to 10 weeks, and now he's on long-term IR. So that's a tough blow for the Chicago Blackhawks, and I hope that Patty Kane can get back onto the ice soon and get back to full health. I don't know if he's going to be back at this point this season. Alrighty. Other news, let's switch over to baseball, baby. It is baseball season. I love it. I'm ready. And spring training has started. Some news coming out. The Red Sox signed that 19-year-old Cuban prospect. What is his name? I can't think of it right now, but a 19-year-old, this guy is ripped. And, I listened to Felger and Maserati up on 98.5, the Sports Hub up in Boston. They do a great job up there, and I listened to them talk about this, and Maz kind of brought up the point, Tony Maserati, saying, we don't know a lot about this. Louis Tion, a Red Sox great, was actually the one that kind of recommended that the Red Sox sign this guy. Moncada is his name. And this is a guy that's not going to see the majors. They gave him $30 million. Red Sox, I think, spent by far the most amount of money this offseason. They just continue to do it and continue to bring Cubans into the league. But Maserati, my point being, is he kind of brought up the steroid issue and the fact that, in the United States, we don't know what they're doing down there. And this guy is 19. He's gigantic. You see guys in the league, too. Cespedes, Puig. They're all from that Caribbean area, and they're huge. Steroids have not left baseball, as you've seen with Alex Rodriguez. And I think this is kind of a risky, unnecessary move by the Red Sox to bring this guy in. He's a shortstop, and he's now covering for fellow Cuban or fellow Caribbean member player Xander Bogaerts' job. So that's interesting. And another note, too, is Manny Ramirez and Kevin Youkilis were hired, I should say, by the Chicago Cubs. And I love seeing this. It's funny. It's kind of like an extension of Moneyball, if you will. The Cubs did sign John Lester to a huge contract this offseason, and they were the winners there. But it's just funny seeing Theo Epstein, the president there, kind of just recruit his old guys. He has Rizzo, who he drafted with the Red Sox. He's his first baseman now. That guy's a good player. Now he got Lester, who he won a World Series with back in 2007 with the Sox. And now he's hiring Manny Ramirez and Kevin Youkilis, 2 of his former players, to help out with, I think it's hitting and scouting. So that's fun. It's fun to watch, and it's going to be interesting. I'd love a Cubs-Red Sox World Series. But yeah, I think the Cubs, they can make some noise, to be honest. And I'm going to get to baseball going forward. I'll probably touch on it, once a week, if you will. But that Central Division, you got the Pirates, the Cardinals, the Reds, the Cubs, and Brewers. All, I think, will be good teams. The Cubs showed some real signs of potential last season. And now with Lester, they're going to have, I think, a solid season coming forth. I don't think they're a playoff team just yet, but Theo Epstein and his crew have certainly made the right moves over there. And sticking with baseball, this new rule to try and kind of slow or speed up, I should say, the game and avoid the slow pace of batters stepping out of the box. You now have to keep 1 foot in the box at all times. I think this is a terrible idea. Yes, it's going to speed up the game, but it's almost like too fast, and it allows you to fast pitch. David Ortiz said it today. He's pretty pissed about this, and he said it's another rule that benefits the pitchers, and he's right. You got to keep a foot in the box. You can't leave the box when you're up at bat, and you got to think that much quicker. You don't know what pitch is coming at you. You have time to adjust your batting gloves. Back in the day, you have Nomar Garciaparra doing his crazy thing. Now guys aren't going to be doing that. And, it certainly will speed up the game. There's, I think, a time limit, and you get a warning or something. But it will speed up the game. The fans probably will enjoy it. It'll make it easier on the TV crews, probably. They can just keep an eye on these guys. And I don't know. It does benefit the pitchers, and this is becoming more of a pitcher's league at the end of the steroid era here. So it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to see a rise of strikeouts and, an increase of strikeouts is the main one for sure. And maybe even a decrease of home runs and hitting as well. So it'll be interesting, and it's certainly going to be interesting. I'm eager to see what comes of this new rule. And again, the spring training is well underway. We're about a month away from the season, a little more, probably about 6 weeks. But it's going to be awesome. I'm very excited. Baseball is a great time of year, and let's hope that snow can melt in time. Local sports, let's do it. I already did the Mid-Atlantic local professional, but let's keep it here because we are the voice of the University of Delaware, and we got an upcoming schedule here. It's crunch time for basketball. The men's basketball team will finish up this Saturday, and they need to pretty much win out to get a bye in the CAA tournament. They'll have Drexel in Philadelphia tomorrow, and then they go to Towson to wrap up the regular season Saturday, and they need to beat Drexel. If they don't beat Drexel, they're likely going to have to play on next Friday in the CAA tournament. The top 6 seeds wait until Saturday to play, and the bottom 4 play Friday night. And I think the Hens are almost bound to that. I think they might end up with the Friday night game. They need to win at Drexel, who's right ahead of them. I think a game ahead of them. They've been helping them out with some losses. But now they got to beat them, and they got to beat Towson most likely to get in. So there's that. The women's swim and dive CAA championships are down in Richmond, actually starting tonight. And then we have lacrosse and baseball getting underway, softball, and women's basketball season is kind of wrapping up too. I think they have 3 more games starting tomorrow night at UNC Wilmington. And they're in right now. I think they're around the 6th seed. So they should be all right. Again, the men's tournament next weekend, women's the following after that, all in Maryland. Women's is Upper Marlboro, I think that's Towson, and then the men's is Baltimore. So, the broadcasting side of things, we won't be back on air until Sunday for the final regular season game for the women. That's this Sunday, March 1st, so you will want to tune into that. Follow us on Twitter at WVUD Sports. Follow me on Twitter at SportsySchwartz. Holla at me, and I'll get you on the show here, and we can do some fun things. But I'm sure you've heard enough of my thoughts, so follow me on Twitter or just give me a shout-out on Twitter. Let me know what you're thinking out there. And yeah, so we're pretty much done with the sports broadcasting side of things up until the tournament and this Sunday when the women wrap up their regular season. That's it for me. I'll be back next week, same time, 3 to 4, 91.3 WVUD and WVUD HD1 Newark. It's Sports with Schwartz. Have a nice day, y'all.